Well, my name is Frank Cosentino. I've been a musician pretty much my whole life. I guess it started 68, the Elvis comeback special. Coming from a big Italian family, we got together at my aunt's house that Sunday, and I remember my aunts buzzing around the house like schoolgirls at a Beatles concert. I didn't know why. And I want to preface with my aunt had the first color TV in Little Italy at the time, one of the first color TVs. So it was a big deal. Anyway, I remember after dinner, we sat in front of the TV, like the whole family, and the NBC Peacock opened up. And then I saw Elvis in that black outfit, in that black leather outfit in the 68 comeback special. And a week later, I took my first guitar lesson, and the rest is history. That's how it started. I guess the real thing that my favorite saying is even water tasted different after, and that was Jimi Hendrix.
Which would have been not too long after, right?
Yeah, it's 1969. In 1969, Maple Leaf Gardens, I was 7 years old. I was taken by an uncle, and what I do remember about it was I was just blown away by what I was hearing. I couldn't compute what I was hearing at the time, but I had already started playing guitar. I've been playing for over a year by that point.
What were you playing? Like, what kind of stuff were you playing?
Oh, we were just, it was, the classics, the House of the Rising Sun. I mean, literally took my first lesson. I was 6 years old. And I remember how that happened, if I can share that with you real quickly. And that was, again, coming from an Italian family, Saturday afternoons were always, we would go to my grandparents' house. Make a long story short, we would have lunch. And it turned out that every time after lunch, one of them would take me and my sister to, if you remember, guys, the corner stores back in the day to get ice cream. And apparently a new music store had opened up right next door to the corner store. And my father tells me he couldn't get me away from the window for weeks on end. And he finally said to me, "Do you want to go in?" And I remember distinctly going, "Yes." And the first thing that hit me, it was as soon as we walked in the door, was the smell. Now, for younger listeners here, there was at a time before internet and all that, where the music stores were the hangs, where you heard about all the new music. And that's how I discovered it was a hang, basically. And I remember the smell of the wood. That was it. I was hooked. I took my first lesson that afternoon. And then again, flipping back to Hendrix, though it would take a couple years for me to really grasp what I had seen, everything changed on my 13th birthday when that same uncle gave me Electric Ladyland by Hendrix. And I got to tell you, at first, truthfully, I was scared of it. I didn't know how to. And then as I slowly dug into it, and that's where, great artists are great artists because, in my opinion, because they make you as a listener or as a practicing artist search their influences. Mm-hmm. So suddenly in my radar, B.B. King, Muddy Waters, and I started to realize how closely connected Hendrix was to all these guys. So it was like, okay, let's see what this Buddy Guy is all about. Let's see what this, Little Richard is all about. And that was another thing. Growing up, my father had a huge record collection. And the truth of the matter is, I discovered it, and it was, when I think in retrospect now, Dad was pretty cool at the time. He's still with us. And that was the majority of his records were coming from Sun Records, which was, in retrospect now, it's like, Dad, you were so cool, right?
But how did he become cool? Like, what made him?
It was, I didn't realize till later in my life, the music he was listening to was going to affect me. There are no musicians in my family.
Right.
I am the first one, and I have been at it my whole life. I knew there was, okay, let me put it to you this way. When I grew up, I didn't have posters of hockey players and things. I had posters of B.B. King. I had posters of, I remember having a poster, believe it or not, of Elmore James. It was that kind of thing. Those were my heroes. I never wanted to be a doctor, a fireman, a policeman. My goals were instant. I knew whatever it was, I wanted to make noise like those guys did.
But what did that mean? Did that mean being like Jimi Hendrix and playing Maple Leaf Gardens, or was it what was your vision of being a musician and making noise?
I wanted to make this. First of all, I wanted to make the sounds that Hendrix was making. So, I've been a teacher as well for 36 years. And for those who don't know, even when we tour Europe and that, I make a point of in every city we play in to give a free clinic. It's just really important to me. When I was growing up, my teachers were records. Slow the needle down, bring it back, and that's how. And unfortunately, it's an art form that lifting from records that is disappearing. I mean, I remember talking with guys like Phil X and that a while back, and they said, and he said to me, Frank, we come from the generation where we internalize the music. And for many years, that was how I learned my music. I trained my ear and I lifted. My first 2 years on the road, I started having musical questions. So it's like, why does this work? And I mean, technical musical questions, like why does this work and why doesn't? So I decided that's it. I want to get educated if I really want to pursue this. My family always brought me up with the thing that knowledge is power. And I give that to my children. I try to convey that to my children and to my students, young and old. The more you know might not necessarily make you a smarter player, but it'll make you more musical player. And I believe that's where it's at. Sometimes smart players are just that smart. It's like I did an article for. I have a monthly article that I write for the Toronto Blues Society. And I did something recently on AI. And essentially, to come back to my part there, essentially it was this, that sure, you might be, in AI's written songs, you might be singing the lyrics, but you're not carrying the weight of the words.
Right.
And that's important to me. Why? Because I started to discover Muddy Waters. I discovered Ray Charles. My father opened up the doors to Little Richard, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, my God, even Johnny Cash. My love of songwriting became incredibly powerful. I just could not stop. Like, writing songs was an important part of me. But I have to be honest with everybody. I spent a lot of my years as a guitar player. I've been playing this is my 56th year as a guitar player, not as a professional. I've been doing it for 40 years at least. Was 56 years of playing was one of the things I basically kind of got from it was that it's a lifestyle. It's listen, there are a lot of great players out there that say nothing in their playing. And I understand that's by far, listen, that's not a put down. I'm a lover. If you're an artist, I know how hard it is to do what you do, to keep afloat. So my hat's off to you. But as an artist, for me, it started to become things that it was a feel thing. So my point to this is I spent a lot of years working on my craft as a guitar player. About 8 years ago, it was time for me to stop living the rock and roll lifestyle. And to make a long story short, I got sober. It was the best move I ever made. I don't want to preach any more on that, but what I realized was I did not put time into songwriting as much as I did. And I got to be honest with you, in the years when I was writing, I mean, this is my 8th record is just being released. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of times, I'm going to get hate mail for this, but a lot of times I wrote songs like this. Oh, let's put some words here and then let's work on the guitar solo. I realized I'm doing exactly what all of my favorite artists who were writers, the complete opposite, for lack of better words, right? Getting educated was an important factor, but I have to be honest with you, it just made me it made me not just a more musical player, because my music came from lifting on records. As far as it just made me. It was important to me being shoved down my throat that knowledge is power. It made me. It gave me choices in my songwriting. There's the best way I can explain it. It gave me choices where in other times before I understood the concept of music theory and all that, it was kind of just putting a blindfold on and putting your hand in a bag and hoping to pick the next chord or the next words. Now I knew there was a choice, which also gives direction in where the song goes.
Let me ask you, when you said being educated was important to you, do you mean you attending Humber College? Is that?
I did Humber when I was at Humber, I did it for 3 years. It was just the little music secret that only the people in the know. I was actually there when the great Peter Harris, who's no longer with us, was the head of the guitar department. And I'll just put he's the guy that taught Rick Emmett. Like Rick, I'll put it to you this way. In my first year at Humber, Rick Emmett came to do a talk to the class, and Rick had just he was a big rock star by that point, and he had just graduated no more than 4 or 5 years before I did. And there was a list of players that have gone on in my class that have gone on to do some great stuff, right? The jazz aspect of Humber for me was a real eye-opener. I have to be honest with you. I came from the road, so I was the only one in class for a long time that could ad-lib instantly. A lot of the guys that were later to become fantastic and productive players were basement players, guys that just practiced in their basement. So I had this thing that I didn't realize, and I couldn't figure out why the teachers kept asking me to show the example, when they would go around the class. Mm-hmm. I realize now why. I'd been on the road for a bunch of years before, and a lot of these kids that were there at the time, from what I gather, were from, 3 hours away from Toronto. So this was a big move for them. I'd already done that kind of thing. So it was a help, but I have to be honest with you. Suddenly, what I knew as the language of guitar had a whole other dialect to it. This is for the best way I can explain it. Music has dialects. We talk about this music that you and I collectively love, the blues, there are dialects. And it's as simple as Delta blues, Chicago blues, Texas blues, and I can go on. They're all part of one big family, but the fact that they have a dialect. Like, there's no question about it when you hear a Texas shuffle and a Chicago shuffle. There's a definite difference, but at the end of the day, there's a feel, and nothing can touch those two grooves. Nothing.
Can I ask you what you thought you would get out of, other than learning the dialect and expanding your horizon, what did you hope to get out of going to Humber?
I guess coming from from a European family, it was always make sure you have, I guess, a backup plan. I didn't have a backup plan. I knew what I wanted to do. It was music. So I was lucky enough that I had parents, I still have them. Thank God that I have parents that were pushing me to go as long as you want. We want you to be educated. If this is what you're going to do, be the best at it. What did I think I was going to get out? You know what? The truth is, I'm not sure. But as every semester ended, I was enlightened. I was overwhelmed. Let's just be honest here. I was very overwhelmed. This was a language that was foreign to me at the time.
Are you talking specifically jazz?
Jazz.
Okay.
I'll give you a quick example. We had a class called World Music, and it was a daily thing. And this was where, it was the first time I heard Charlie Parker. It was the first time I'd already heard Miles, because Kind of Blue was an important record growing up. I didn't know what Kind of Blue really stood for. I just loved, it was a beautiful CD to throw on when you were driving in your car. It was just so moody. Anyway, I remember the first time I heard Charlie Parker. I believe the song was, I guess it doesn't matter, but Charlie starts blowing and I don't know what's happening. I just did not know it. This was the first time I had ever heard Charlie Parker. Now, as semesters went on, all of a sudden, Charlie Parker came into my radar. Wes Montgomery came in my radar. John Coltrane, The Loneliest Monk. And suddenly it was like, I remember hearing Monk for the first time too. Sorry I keep going back because there's
That's
so
fine.
much to talk about. Monk for the first time sounded wrong to me. And I realized now in retrospect what was it was he was playing all the in-between notes that no one dared touch. That was a mind blow for me. So how does this all go back to my love of Jimi Hendrix? I think my favorite quote about Hendrix was I was the head of the blues department for the National Guitar Workshop for a bunch of years, a traveling music school that throughout the year travels to, we did UBC in Vancouver, Humber College, and we had oh my God, I can't remember his name, blues guitar player. I'm sorry, I'm just blanking here. He released the album "Talk to Your Daughter."
Robin Ford?
Robin Ford, thank you. He was a guest. We had a lot of special guests every week that would come in, and we would back them up doing their thing. So Robin, we were sitting around having a little staff meeting, and I remember looking at Robin and saying, "Can you just give us one Miles story?" And he said, "Okay." I got a call from Miles management to be in San Francisco the next morning. Miles was playing, and I was going to cover the guitar, he said. Now, I hadn't played with Miles, and I haven't met Miles yet, he says. So I'm in my hotel room, and Miles Handler comes in and knocks on the door. He says, "The old man wants to see you." I'll never forget him. "The old man wants to see you." So Robin knocks on the door. Another handler opens the door, and Miles has got his back. He walks into the room, he told us. I'll never forget this. He goes, "Miles got his back turned to me, and I'm standing there, and he's not acknowledging me. And I hear munching," he says. A few minutes later, Miles turns around and goes, with chicken wings in his hand, going, "You want some chicken?" And that for me was just like, so that's what Miles was all about. But then Miles said something about Jimi Hendrix. They said, I read I'm a voracious reader I'm a big bio reader, the classic guys like Miles and Frank Sinatra. I mean, to such a point where I have a memorabilia collection that I've been collecting for years with autographs of guys like Miles, Frank Sinatra, Hendrix. My favorite one, Sly Stone. When I know I'm sidetracking here. When I went to the movies in early 70s to see the Woodstock movie, I went to see Hendrix. Sly Stone, when I heard 500,000 people sing "Let Me Take You Higher," my head exploded. I had never heard of Sly Stone by that. I saw him in the Woodstock movie. But getting back to what Miles said, Miles in an interview in his book said, the interviewer said to him, "Miles, Bitches Brew, this is some of the heaviest stuff you ever recorded. What's the premise? What was your inspiration?" And he says, if I can be blunt here, "That effing Jimi Hendrix." The story was during Jimmy's famous Fillmore East show with the Band of Gypsies, Miles was side stage. And that's why John McLaughlin got called in on the session for Bitches Brew. And Miles said, no, I don't want that clean stuff. I want that wah thing, that distortion. I want that Hendrix thing. And to me, that said a lot about Hendrix. Because Hendrix, according, the way, from what I gathered, the way Miles was thinking was Hendrix wasn't even like worth noticing. But Miles noticed him because he was breaking ground and, enough where it influenced Bitches Brew from everything I've read, right? So Jimmy is really, really important. But I got to stress, because of Jimmy, the artists that influence him are now artists over the years that are still influence me now, right down from Robert Johnson. So for me, when I got to play with Buddy Guy at his club in Chicago, for me, I was so excited. And the reason being was I got to meet him was he was the last living link for me between my two heroes, Muddy Waters and Hendrix. And I'll tell you a quick story. I've been teaching for 36 years, and I'll do it till I can't do it anymore as part of what I do. But when I teach students, how do I explain this? When I teach students like about Hendrix and all that, for example, I'll say, Voodoo Child, I want you to listen to something. So I'll stop and I'll say, and I'll put Catfish Blues on by Muddy Waters. And they'll go, oh, he's copying Hendrix. They're young. You have to understand, they're young. No, this is where Hendrix got it. And then when I let, a lot of students, because I know a lot of SRV style and music, it's just something I've always loved. I'll say, you want to hear something? And I'll play, I'll play some Albert King, and they'll go, wow, he's copying Stevie Ray. And it's interesting. It's like, no, you don't understand. The song you heard, the riffs you heard on Texas Flood, it's coming from Albert King here, or Albert, the Three Kings, but mostly Albert, right? So again, don't knock the influences. It's like that saying, don't outshine the master.
So if we go back to Humber, when you graduate from Humber, or when you finish from Humber, how different are you as a musician, and what did that experience do?
That's a great question. It took years for what I learned to finally come out. And they warned us at graduation. All right, you're now prepared. I remember it started like this. The first day, the prof walked in and said, so you guys think you're the thing now because you got in. Because it was there was about 25, 26 of us in the guitar class. And he says, here's the first lesson. And he was trying to make a point. He says, what's the most famous song in the world? Of course, everybody put their hand up and said, a Zeppelin song, Beatles, whatever. And he goes, no, it's Happy Birthday. This was the first lesson I ever learned, and I'm sure other Humber students who are listening to this probably got this same lesson. So the thing was, all right, everyone, pull your guitars out. And he says, we're going to go around the room, and everyone gets one chance to play the melody of Happy Birthday. Well, everybody failed. Everybody failed. His point of his lesson was, now listen, what we're about to do over the next 3 years is, if you can't pull out of your fingers what you're hearing in your mind's ear instantly, you're not really playing. And that was a mind blow for me. So suddenly, as the course was going through, I noticed I was still lifting. I was still working at night playing with the band, right? So I kept lifting songs. Suddenly, I don't know, it's like a light turned on. Things I could never hear before, because I still do that. I still, to this day, and most guys of my generation who play an instrument, that's how we still lift songs. To me, I internalize a song. When I read from paper, when I read from music, I never remember the song. When I lift it by ear, I never forget it, right? So years later, things started to come out, specifically in my writing style. All of a sudden, it was like chords that I would start, I was always taught this. If you can't convey your song with simple chords on an acoustic guitar, then you don't have a song. So I started sitting, so I would do that. I would sit with a Martin D28, one of my songwriters, and I would just sit and I would strum chords with melodies. And suddenly it was like, you know what? That major chord, let's turn it into a major seventh chord. So basically, from the theory standpoint, I went from using a lot less 3-note chords to 4-note chords. And it suddenly blossomed up. And for me, one of my loves music styles was gospel. But I'm talking the church was important, but the gospel I learned was from, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles. That Motown thing was a big important part. My God, next to tripping in Memphis when we were there to be part of the the International Blues Challenge. Going to Motown was just, I was like a kid in a candy store, Right. So, but at the end of it all, getting back to my chord choices now became more harmonic. So, but then I started running the problem of sometimes overdoing it where simpler was better. So there was pros and cons, but at the end of the day, the decisions that opened up to me, or the ways the song, because I'm always one, I never sit and write a song. A song finds me, and then I let it lead me where it has to go. Because you can talk to any songwriter. For me, at least, I can never sit down and just write. But it's crazy. I'll be driving in the car, and a melody will hit me, and voice recorder. I have pieces of paper and guitars in every room in my house now.
Right.
Every room in my house, because you just never know. That's how serious this is. Someone said, how serious do you take it? Let me put it to you this way. I wash my hands before I pick up my instrument. It's a regular thing. I respect the instrument that much. It's important to me. It's predicted where I'm going in my life. It's also it's given me my purpose in life. And I'm always thankful. I've traveled the world. My God, this instrument let me travel the world, meet new friends, and I have, meet new fans throughout Europe and that, where a lot of times in this beautiful city of ours that I love, I was born and raised here, and I'm a proud Torontonian, I just was invisible for a long time. It took that old cliche. I went to Europe, toured a bunch of tours, came back, then suddenly people started taking notice. So, and again, it came down. And the reason why it was important to get noticed was you don't get paid if you don't get noticed. Let's just be honest here. Mm-hmm. But for me now, at my age, I'm 63. I've been a professional player my whole life. I would still be playing if I never got heard. It's just that important to me. I just been fortunate enough that I seem to be doing something right that seems to be hitting people the right way. I'm sure there's people that don't like what I do, and I've made peace with that too, because the journey's mine. But at the end of the day, I always say the journey's mine, but it's not really mine. Without the listeners, without the people that fill in the clubs, I'm nothing. It's just that simple.
If we go back, if I understand it correctly, when you started your own band, you were more of a mainstream
Absolutely.
rock
It's
band,
where,
right?
and may I interrupt? And that's because that's where you got paid.
Right.
I remember when I started, you might remember, 84 is I got my first band together. When I first started, blues was not cool. It was not cool to play at the time because, they were having problems filling up Albert's Hall at the time. No one was going to see blues. And then suddenly things started changing. Our friend Jeff Healy broke a lot of things wide open. But you know what? I also got to make mention to other friends like the Jack DeKaisers, the Downchild Blues bands. These are people that I looked up to, but I also call friends. I've been lucky enough. That's one of the cool perks. If you stick it out long enough, your heroes will become friends. If and again, it comes down to it's respect.
But was it always like that? Was there ever competition?
Always. In the 80s, that's where it was. I found in the 80s, it was cutthroat for a long time. And I made a vow, you can ask anybody, I made a vow that I will never be that musician because I lived through it. I will never be that cutthroat musician. Was I then? Probably, because that's how it all worked.
Give me an example without naming
Okay,
names.
I'll give you an example. There was stuff like, for example, a payment for, this was at a time where PA systems were a whole production unit at own. There were two guys that came in a truck and looked after your PA. They followed you on the road. A payment never got to the production company in time. So suddenly there was like, well, we can't set up the gear. It was stuff like that. Well, you're going to get paid. So why are we making this trouble? It might be a day late, but it was things like that. Today, you can ask anybody. I will, if I see one of my friends who are worthy of being called up on stage, and what I mean by that are good players, guys that are up there playing, I make notice of them at every show. It's supporting your colleagues. Whether other people want to do that or not, that's just the way I want to work, and I want to work that way for the rest of my life. Listen, enemies, when we're apart, we're the weakest. As a community, I see this. What we collectively love this art form. It's a community. I wrote the newest article that's going to be coming out in my Guitar Talk column in the Toronto Blues Society's Maple Blues News. Talks about if we're as a community together, it's the old cliche. We're stronger that way. It's just the way it is. And unfortunately, there's not all of us are on board. And that's a shame. But for me, you can ask anybody if if a Chuck Jackson walks into the club or one of those guys, it's like the next thing you know, they're on stage. Why? I'm not afraid they're going to take away my fire. That's not what I'm more interested in them bringing more joy to the audience. Hey, look who's here. So-and-so's here. He's in the room. This guy, it's amazing to me. And I love that.
Was there a point where you were concerned?
Well, I was concerned for a while because there were a lot of people that, want to... I can't wrap that thought, that thinking around my head, and that is, let's put them down. Let's do this. Let's do that. Anything to bring them down. Why? Mm-hmm. We're all in this together. Whenever I talk to people online and that, and I always leave the conversation with, don't ever forget, we're all in this together. And I'm usually talking with other players and all that. Right. Now it's like, I don't care what other people, if that's the way they want to be, but I don't want to be involved with people like that anymore. And, I've noticed as I've gotten older, the friendships blossom, with, guys like, who are some of my good friends in the business. Greg Godovitz, Jack DeKaiser. I'm playing on Friday night with Gary Kendall and Jim Casson as my rhythm section at a show. These are just friends of mine that for many years I looked up to. And the fact that they see something enough in me after all these years to, no problem, I'll do your gig, blah, blah, blah. I'm thrilled still. I'm still 10 years old. I was saying, to somebody, we did this CNE a few weeks ago, and I was saying to the audience, it's funny, I'm 63 years old, and I still have to check my 10-year-old self when I walk through those gates at the CNE. I remember telling the audience, we've traveled the world. I've been in every city, in almost every city in the world, blah, 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 playing with a band. But it's this one that I get most nervous about. Why? Because for as long as I can remember, this has been a cherished tradition in our family. For as long as I can remember. And to make a long story short, for when my kids listen to this, next week, my adult children will be handcuffed to my hand because the Cosentino tradition of going to the CNE continues.
After you did your rock thing, you decided at one point to concentrate on blues. At a point where blues was probably not that popular, other than the people you had mentioned. But was that a difficult decision? How did you come to that decision?
It was easy. My pal Stan Michek, who's one of the most prolific bass players in the Canadian scene. He's with Kim Mitchell, he's with Sass Jordan. My point of name dropping is he's out there. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, what was the...
You made a decision to focus on blues as opposed to mainstream
It was
rock.
Thursday nights. Him and I were teaching at music schools close together, and we would get together Thursday nights, and he says, let's go down to Albert's Hall. And it was Danny Mark's Albert's Hall thing. I think it was Thursday nights. And it became a regular thing for 2 years. And I just, every time I went, this is something I'm really interested in.
I wonder, wasn't it Stormy Monday?
Stormy Mondays.
Right. So
Stormy
Mondays.
Mondays.
Was Monday.
So it was Monday. I remember it was the beginning of the week because it was a weird time to go. But it was, you're right, Stormy Mondays. It was Albert's Hall. And suddenly I walk in and, Albert Collins is there playing with, I now know why. Albert Collins was playing, and on harmonica was from Fathead, Al Lerman. At the time, I didn't know him at the time. Al played on 2 of my albums, harmonica on 2 of my albums. And that's how it started. Then Danny became friends with us, and suddenly we were up. I was jamming with Danny on a regular basis. I was lucky to be called up. At that time, Danny was very strict on who he let up on stage. And you know what? Rightfully so. There was a lot of nuts there at the time too. But anyway, he finally, out of his good graces, invited me up. Stan was always up there because Stan played with Danny for many years on and off. But it was Albert's Hall. It was definitely Albert's Hall. And then Grossman's. Oh my God, Grossman's. Mike McDonald. Sundays with Mike McDonald. And then there was the time after that where, Jeff Healy would just show up and it was a regular thing. I got to know Jeff. I'll give you an example. After I met Jeff, I was playing Chicago's. This was an old blues club on Queen Street, up the street from the old City TV building. And I was backstage and the bartender said, "Hey man, someone's here to see you." It was Jeff. I go, "Jeff, what are you doing here? Who are you here with?" He goes, "Oh, I just walked up from the club." Now, that's about a mile and a half away. I was blown away. He goes, "Well, Frank, I was in the office at Healy's at his club," and he says, "I just asked the guys, who's playing around?" They go, "Cos is playing up the street at Chicago's." I thought I'd walk up to say hi and see how you're doing. We were best friends ever since then. It was just unbelievable. It's that kind of community, which for me is the best perk of this business, right? But it was Albert's Hall. It was Grossman's. It was going to see, heroes like Jack DeKaiser, the Downchild Blues Band. I was Mike McDonald's guest one Sunday, and I was the guest for the Sunday Jam. And who walked in? I remember he looked a little disheveled. Please, no disrespect meant here. He looked a little disheveled. And then I found out later who it was. It was Donnie Walsh's brother, Hawk. And Hawk came in to sing songs. And this was my exposure to that downtown blues scene. Suddenly I knew who Mike McDonald was. Now remember, back in the day, guys I looked up to again were like Mike McDonald. Even though he wasn't a blues guy, Robbie Rocks, Rita Shirelli. My God, Rita Shirelli and I have become very good friends. But I remember hearing Rita for the first time at Albert's Hall going, where'd this voice come from? Mm-hmm. So much power. Then I find out she's like a little Italian girl, almost from the same province as my father is. So it was the Toronto scene. 1989, I started the Frank Cosentino Band, and I never looked back. So almost 40 years of doing this. And it started off where there was a lot of Hendrix, a lot of heavier stuff. But then I started to creep in the Muddy Waters. A time where I did Robert Johnson songs. I even reignited my love of Clapton. Let me explain. I'm going to get some people who are not going to like this. I lost touch with Clapton during the Armani suit days. I understand as an artist what he was doing. He was padding, making sure his future was okay financially. I get it. Until he released the blues album, From the Cradle. Mm-hmm. He found his fire again, as far as I was concerned. Suddenly, it was like, oh my God, listen to that Freddie King song that he does, Tore Down. It just brought me back. I went back, even though I was in love with what he was doing, that fire that he had in Cream seemed to be back in his playing. Is that all that matters to me as a guitar player? No. But it was something that I really gravitated to when it came to Clapton. When I heard Cream, it was like, holy smokes, this is unbelievable. Please don't misunderstand me. His catalog between that and From the Cradle is substantial and amazing. It just wasn't my thing on the guitar part of it. Mm-hmm. Songwriting was brilliant. There's no question about it. But the guitar playing, when I heard that opening cut, his guitar solo on Tore Down on the From the Cradle album, good Lord, it was back. So suddenly he came back into my radar. But it was, again, it all goes back to, remember what I said earlier. Suddenly influences became real important to me. Let me listen more to Freddie King. I went back to Freddie King again because of Clapton. I went back to Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy and Albert King because of Hendrix. There's no question. I discovered Elvis because of my dad's record collection. But from that, I discovered some of my favorite rock and roll artists, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and of course, Johnny Cash. But from there, it expanded to, suddenly it was like, good Lord, Hound Dog Taylor, where did he come from? And, but it all goes back to me with Muddy Waters and Hendrix. And when I made that connection that Hendrix basically, this is just my humble opinion, took what Muddy Waters was doing and electrified it. I like to say put it on steroids because that's what he did. And it really came clear when Gary Kendall said this to me. Gary said to me from Downchild Blues Band, he said, when you listen to when you listen to Clapton and you go back to Freddie King, what did he say? He said, you hear how the house that Clapton built. You see the foundation, you hear it. And I remember that stuck with me. Mm-hmm. So suddenly I went back to artists, like listening to, for example, I listened B.B. King's Live at the Regal. I started to realize that, B.B. solos, and I know this is such a cliche, but remember, this was for me in the discovery mode, was telling story. To me, at first, when I heard his solos, it was like, my God, those are amazing. But then I realized there was a story being told. Something we're losing in music again, and that is, tell a lyric, tell a story in the lyric. At least the way I've been writing lately is story-based songs. Those are the ones that got me returning back. Sure, the guitar solo was important, but at the end of the day, the story.
So how did you mentioned previously that there was a point where you just kind of wrote the lyrics so you could get to the guitar solo. At what point do you realize that you have to work on the lyrics and the guitar solo was secondary to the song?
Because I started to realize my songs weren't saying anything. And this is, understand, when I got sober, things, it's the old, everything changed, but my clarity opened up. It was unbelievable. It's something, and it was something that I had just forgotten about because I had not been clear. I had not had, my mind was never clear.
Can I ask you what led to becoming sober?
I didn't like who I was becoming. I knew, listen, at the end of the day, the best way I can explain it is this. I needed to become a better friend, a better human, a better parent, and a better musician. That was really important to me. My family, music's been my life, but my family is all encompassing around that too, right? So, I try to, like, music for me taught me, harmony, and I don't mean from the theoretical point, harmony and the beauty of words, and it's stuff like that I could try to convey to my children, even in their daily life, right? It's really, like, things changed for me when I got sober. But in the songwriting, I realize now when I go back and listen to records, I never said anything in my songs. It was all about the guitar solo.
Right.
Now, if you listen to the newest stuff that I've been releasing, there's a lot of thought. One of the songs, You Can't Call Back, Fate's Gonna Call You, but you can't call back. Lines like that. Also, I must mention Derek Downham, the great producer who has been producing my newest stuff and really helping me out. Derek said to me when he approached me about doing the new record to produce it, he said, look, Frank, I'm going to take you to some uncomfortable places musically. Are you okay with that? If not, then it was nice meeting you. Because he said, I want you to start thinking this way, Frank. This is right before we even pushed record. I want you to think of everyone knows you as Frank, the touring musician, the blues guitar player. We need you to start thinking Frank, the Juno nominee. Putting your headspace in the songwriting. Now, that wasn't all of that. It was just, we need the change now. We need to switch, for lack of better words, the brand, is what he said. And with Derek's help, man, he called me out on a lot of, like, I'll give you a quick example. I'd walk in, it was time to do a guitar solo, and I thought I had it down. And Derek would nonchalantly come back to my headset and go, "That was great, guitar player. Now could you play for the song?" It was stuff like that that opened up. Frank, that lyric, I don't know about it, man. You've told me something here, but here, I don't know where you're going. It was things like that. Making a song cohesive like a good story, like a good book. That was really an important lesson I learned from Derek, and I'll never forget him for that.
Can you describe how you do that with a guitar solo? How do you tell a story with a guitar solo?
Okay, for me with guitar solos, I always mention when I do clinics, people say, like, what are you thinking? It's bursts of energy. Am I thinking about the notes I'm playing? No, and I'm going to tell you why, because when I start thinking is when I start messing up. And I'm sure you've heard that from other interviewers. Practice is for the practice room, but it doesn't, being a good player doesn't come from just wishing it. You got to put the practice in. It's a daily thing. It's a daily grind for me. And as I get older, it's becoming harder and harder to keep myself together. Music, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm just running into a lot of 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds that are playing, licks note for note, but it's a different time. They've got the internet, they got a lot of time. But the guitar solo, for me, it's always been bursts of energy. I listen to the lyric before the guitar solo and the lyric after the solo. And from there, I like to kind of use the solo that I do as an extension of what that last lyric said and a precursor to what this next lyric's going to say. So it's almost another lyric. What am I, do I ever have anything that's written? No. And that's where Derek and I butted heads when it came to, in a good way. Please don't misunderstand. In a good way. It's like, Frank, you can't just always let it go. That's good for live. People get that. But there are certain things in songs. So there's a lot of ways I look at solos. But to answer your question, at the end of the day, for me, it's about closing my eyes and knowing it's going to happen, but hoping for the best. I was always that, throw the tape on. Let me take a pass. Let me take another pass. Let me take another pass and listen back to see if I've got anything. But Derek was up for that. We did a lot of that. But there were times where he put his foot down, and that's why I got a producer. It was the first time I worked with a producer of any notoriety. And Derek's well established, and I loved what he did in the past. So I was ready to take my lumps, and I did. And at the end of the day, I learned a lot from him as a songwriter, as a guitar player. And you know what? He also is just a good human. He taught me a lot of things, which is important to me.
As a guitar player, is there a perfect guitar solo out there?
Oh. No, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that's what all guitar players get up every morning for. To write that perfect guitar solo. I think for me, that's what keeps me going. It's like, okay, I didn't get it today, I'm going to keep getting it. And I believe that works for any instrument. So is there, I could name a couple of what I think are perfect guitar solos, but that's not the premise here. I think it's important is there a perfect guitar solo? No, I think that's what keeps us getting in our cars and traveling to this city and that city, striving for that. At least that's how I feel. Today is the day I'm going to get that solo down. And if I don't, I'm one day closer.
Okay, so you're working on a new album. You're working on a bunch of songs. The world has changed. The music world has changed a great deal. The albums don't mean the same thing. CDs don't sell off the stage as easily. Tell me what you hope to get out of this album. Why do you do this?
I just want, I guess at this point, is just expanding it to a bigger audience. I love this art form. I sometimes get lost between the cracks. Like a lot of the bigger festivals that my peers are doing, and we pretty much do the same thing, get on a regular basis, and I seem to be left out. And it's not a boo-hoo on me. It's, what do I do? How do I fix this problem? Is it new music? Do I get it to more faces? Eric Alper's been helping me with promotion, and because of his help, suddenly there was a bigger set of ears listening. The famous blues festivals. Why is it important that we be part of them? Because I consider myself part of the community. After 40 years, I thought it would be part of it, but at this point, I don't boohoo me. It's not boohooing. It's like, how do I fix this? How do I make this happen? And that all comes from sobriety. How do I don't sit and cry about it. How do I make it happen? All right, let's get some new songs, some solid tunes. Let's get them to the ears of those promoters, even though on a regular basis we send out 200 submissions a year. And I might be lucky to get, and it's not like maybe I might be lucky to get maybe 10 throughout the summer. If I'm lucky, that's a good, and then I got to say one thing. I've noticed sometimes that there are a lot of the same acts every year on the bill, and that's okay. God bless them. But I think there has to be a door that opens up for, or the other one. The other one is the new kid on the block. Good for them. Suddenly they're getting pushed up into all these festivals that unfortunately a lot of us have been trying for decades to get in. I'm not saying every festival, but let's just say that I've had, it's just, I don't bet on anything happening, even though every year we promote. It's just how I keep my inner peace of it, right? Because I was taking it very personal as an artist. Like, what am I doing wrong? And it started messing with my head, if I can say, in that, am I just like not good enough? Am I, even after all these years, what am I missing here? And, to the point, and I'll leave it at this, I will frequent a lot of these festivals because I love the music. And I can't walk down one of the streets at a festival without 10 people going, hey, where are you playing, Frank? And I'm like, I'm not. So that started to hurt me a bit, right? My point is a little more of a level playing field. I'm not putting anyone down. I just think we should open the door to new artists, even if they've been around 40 years. New artists that people have not heard because I never got a chance to do a stage of that kind of I've done big stages, please don't misunderstand me, but the ones that are important to me are the festivals in my community. The things that are happening in Ontario and Canada. I'm a proud Canadian. I'm a proud Toronto musician. I want to be more part of the scene if it's possible. And again, I'm not asking for any favors. I'm trying to fix whatever the problem is. I run into a lot of doors, but that's never stopped me before, right?
So with this new album, tell me a little bit about the new album. But your hopes are that this will help you get out there more.
It's a more the songs are songs. I'll give you an example. I would walk in. I used to use this. I would walk in with a lump of coal, and by the time I'd left the studio, we would have a diamond in the making. Like Derek was able. Most of my songs would be completed, and Derek would say to me, "Okay, listen, Frank." He would never rewrite the song. That's not what he did. That wasn't his job. He told me. He says it was the arrangements of stuff, and it was crazy how I'd feel uncomfortable, and he'd say, "Now listen back." So he'd play it back. It's like, how did you hear that before I did? Things like that. The songs are thought provocative, are provoked. I hope so because of the lyrics we wrote. Lost love, finding hope again, surviving the trauma of addiction, and it was a trauma for me. It was a bad time for me. I was functioning the whole time.
Can I ask you how long you thought it was a bad time? Like, how long was it a problem?
It started to, okay, that's a great question. It worked for a long time until it stopped. About 20 years ago, it started to become, the problem started to show its face. And it got to the point where forgetting little things at the club and that, to the point where I'm embarrassed and ashamed of this, but I was blacking out. That was it. That was it. My friends were seeing it. I was the only one that wasn't seeing it. The fact that I'm here today sitting with you 8 years later, I run 5 miles every day. I quit smoking 5 years, all of that stuff. The only thing I might add that my only poison now is Cuban cigars. I'm sorry. You're going to have to take those out of my cold, dead hands. Anyway, but the songs are more thought of. And the truth is, it was the first time I wrote sober. Literally, literally. So suddenly thoughts and ideas, I have, just like all writers, I have tons of scrap paper and books written with stuff. So I would just open up with a guitar in my hand and one line would start it off. I'd write that one line down from the book and suddenly it started flowing through. And again, I'm one of those writers that I don't know where I'm going to go with it. I let the song take me. And that writing that way has always been successful for me. They're the most, I'm proudest of these songs, and they're the first time they were produced by a proper producer, even though I've had producers before, by a producer that, suddenly it was like, I guess having his name part on this project really got a cut. Oh, Derek's working with Frank. Man, I've heard of Frank for a long time, but Derek's working with him. Suddenly things started to change. And then in the sobriety part in 2017, myself and Jack DeKaiser were the only two Canadians inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame in the States. I never saw that coming, right? Like at all. Jack, I expect that for a guy like Jack, but I remember when it was announced on social media, I'm like, Jack, you know anything about this? He goes, oh no, I heard. I said, why didn't anyone get in touch with me? Because the two certificates were side by side online, right? That changed a lot, but it also didn't change a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You'd think after that award things would change. Do you want to know what happened? For almost a year after I got the award, I suddenly didn't have work. Well, not as much work as I used to. And here's the ironic thing. Someone said of the blue, did you ever think, Frank, maybe you should contact the places, the venues you were playing and ask what the problem was? So I did. And you know what it was? Most of the club owners and the venue owners thought I was out of their league now. And for almost a year, I came 3 times close to taking that frame off my wall and throwing it in the garbage. And it was just something stupid like that. I'm like, no. To the club owners in the venue, no. Let's play, let's work, blah, blah, blah. And that was a problem for a while, which was, I didn't foresee that at all. I thought everything would be, sunshine and rainbows, but it just didn't work out that way.
Is it my imagination, or did you not recently, within the last year or two, take some time off playing live?
Oh, I did. Just for, it was because, isn't that interesting? You know that. Listen, I got to the point where after 25, 30 years of, shall we say, the clubs and the chicken wing circuit, mm-hmm. and again, I don't want this to come across like I'm tripping, because that's not what it is at all. I played that circuit for 5 days a week for decades. And I started to feel uneasy going to these clubs. And at the end of the day, it was like, if this is all that's available to me, I don't know if I want to be a performer anymore. Now you got to understand, this is my life, and for me to think that way was suicide to me.
Can you explain uneasy? What does that mean? Like what constitutes uneasiness?
It was uneasy for me because how to explain this? Hold on. It was uneasy for me in that I want to say it. I felt that we had done our time. Am I tripping? Maybe. We had done our time. It's important to do the things, but I was watching my colleagues and newcomers suddenly breaking into all these festivals and stuff. And I was being, again, just shot out of a lot of festivals. For whatever reason, I don't know the reason, and I don't blame anybody. I really want to be clear about that. Mm-hmm. I know this is a business. I know but if that was all that was left to me, I'd already done it. there was nothing left for me. So I thought, I can never quit music. This is what I do. I'm not getting any prettier. So, well, how do I approach this? All right, let's get down to doing some writing. Let's get some proper promotion from guys like Eric Alper and all that. Let's play the game like the big boys do, and that's what I did. Suddenly, it's been a slow process, but at the end of the day, if it was, I guess I got tired of playing rooms where, do you mind setting your amp away from the woman's washroom's door? Or can you move your amp a bit? The waitresses have to. I got tired of that.
What did the time away do for you? What did you
It
learn
made
from
me
that experience?
rethink, reevaluate what I was doing. I knew that I would never quit, but taking the time off was like, okay, because I got to be honest with you. I was about to start drinking again because I couldn't handle going to these clubs anymore. And remember, it had been part of my life for 30 years. All of them. I loved it for a long time. And then I didn't like it anymore. And I talked to a lot of my heroes who are my friends, said the same thing. We all have to do that, but after a while, it gets to you. I got tired of, okay, I'm going to say it. I got tired of not being appreciated. So did the guys in the band. Like these are full-time musicians. These aren't kids. These are full-time. These are lifers, right? Anyone I surround myself with, they're lifers. We aren't weekend warriors. I would see the weekend warrior bands that would show up. God bless them. Everyone wants, music is music. Enjoy it any way you can. I didn't want to be associated with clubs that, I would play on a Friday night, and on a Saturday night, they'd have some grade B band in there. I started to feel unappreciated. It's that unappreciation feeling. That's part of being a musician or an artist in general. That's in your DNA. It just happens. If not, you're not a real artist, right? But I thought, my God, 40 years. What am I missing here? Why am I not getting to these festivals? And I keep bringing them up because they're important to me. It's where I can showcase my take on the blues to this audience who, like me, we collectively love this art. Not some bunch of guys that I'm interrupting their soccer game on the screen while they're eating chicken wings. Do you think that's being like...
No, not at all. I mean, the other thing we should say, and maybe we've talked about it, but that we don't emphasize enough is you spend a lot of time teaching.
Yeah.
I think you get a lot out of teaching.
And I do that. The reason why I teach is because I don't want to play those rooms anymore. I said to myself, I forgot to mention that. I never got into this for teaching. Teaching fell in my lap. I fell in love with it. But I only teach so I don't have to play Joe's Chicken Wing Club down the street. I just got it. I got it. Like when I would pull into the driveway for years to park in the parking lot of whatever club I'd be playing at, a lot of times my stomach would go into knots. And this just started over the last few years, a bunch of years ago, right? And I went, what am I doing? I'm not even having fun anymore. And I'll be honest with you, it got to the point where between sets, I'd go back to my car and just sit till it was time to go back on. I was becoming antisocial. And in this business, you can't be that way. So I had to reevaluate something. I didn't want to bring my problems down on anybody. I never told anybody how I was feeling because I never want to come across like a diva because that's not what it is here. It's my nose has been to the grindstone for over 40 years. Why? Because I really love this art form. Do I believe in myself? I guess I do. But more importantly, my love has no limits in this art form. I love this guitar, music. I love being in a community with fellow artists and dreamers because that's what I am. And to me, that's important. It's the best perk of this business is being in a community tightly knit, again, of other artists and dreamers. And dreamers is the big word.
It's funny. It's when I found out about what teaching meant to Randy Rhoads. And how it was time for him to improve being a guitar player.
Absolutely, because it takes two different muscles. There's muscles to teach and there's muscles to play.
What made you I mean, I don't know if you've got the passion back.
For teaching?
No, for playing.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm on fire. I
So
can't
how
sit
did
here.
that happen? How?
It had to do with, people, the help I was getting with the new album. Derek Downham, a gentleman by the name of Mike Ormsby, believed in my music. He approached me and believed in my music the new music, before anyone else did, and believed enough that he secured financing for me to get this done. All of a sudden, it's like, you know what? I got some pretty big cats behind me. I feel good again. This is good. Because I was losing the passion of playing. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying that. I lost the passion to play, and this is all I've ever done. And it had to do with the venues I was playing. And I shouldn't say this. And certain venues have a certain kind of crowd that just didn't appeal to me anymore. And specifically, listen, most of the clubs are sports clubs who decide to bring in music.
Right.
And we're treated that way still, where it's like, can you not play until the playoffs are done? Why did you hire us? I understand they're running a business, but it was things like that that kept building up in me. One of my favorite ones, I just finished playing 2 sets. I'm about to do the 3rd set. And, the famous drunk guy in the bar comes. You guys know any Tragically Hip? Where have you been for the last 2 hours? Like what have you been listening to me play?
Right.
You know.
But so how did you get that joy back? I mean, you see these people who believe in you, who are pushing you to continue and showing support. But once you get out there and start playing, what
I guess it comes back to when you teach. I have my guitar in my hand for 8 hours a day. I know that sounds like, wow, he practices. Teaching, I never have the guitar away from me when I'm teaching. A lot of stuff. When I hear my students, young and old, say, "But I want to do it like you," the light clicked back on in my head. What am I, an idiot? Don't be an idiot, Frank. Don't be so hard on yourself. You know what? It was just you had a couple of humps in your road where, like, I really was so scared that I don't want to do this anymore. I kept it to myself and I didn't tell anybody, and I started becoming, introverted. But I just stayed home a lot because people would say, what's going on? Why? And I didn't want to have to explain. I didn't know myself. And then I started writing songs, and I approached Derek approached me, and I would play him songs, and he would go, "This is really good, Frank. You're writing well." And it's like, and he came to see me play as it was coming back. This is when it started. He goes, "You're playing really well, man." And I went, okay, so if I can avoid these clubs let's just say certain venues that I just was not comfortable playing anymore, suddenly that stress was gone. Mm-hmm. Sure, I wasn't working, but I don't know if but as we get older, I find that my biggest concern is keeping my peace of mind. Mm-hmm. I think you know what I'm talking about. Peace of mind in everything, because everything just began to flow better for me when up here, I was at peace. Here, I was at peace, right?
Do you think your writing changed because of what you went through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure the next album will go that way too, like change a little bit too. Because every day, like when I stop drinking, I hear things differently. I see things, I smell things differently. All of that stuff changed. I will hear, one of my favorite things is a student will make a mistake in my room, and I'll go, and they'll go, "What's wrong, Frank?" I'll go, "Could you do that again?" And I'll make a mental note of that mistake. And sometimes it blossoms into a new thing. It's things like that. Or I'll hear, like, I'll give you an example. I was at Humber. I was driving home. David Bowie's album, Let's Dance was big on the radio. And I think it was Let's Dance or China Girl came on, and I was on it doesn't matter, on one of the highways here, coming from the Newham campus. So I was coming from Highway 27. Humber music was there at the time. Oh my God. Yeah. and the guitar solo, I think it was Let's Dance, comes on. It really was, by the time I got to the driveway in my house, there was no internet yet. Who the hell is this? Do you know who the guitar player is on blah 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 on the new David Bowie album? No, Frank, no. So I had to go to Sam the Record Man in Sherway Gardens at the time to
Right.
find out who it was, and 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 that's how things like that started for me, where it was like, who is this guy, man? Like, I was blown away when I heard it. And then that opened up 1983. John Long from Long and McQuaid, who's no longer with us, he passed away, called me and said, Cos, I got some tickets for that guitar player that played with David Bowie at the El Macombo. I remember fighting him, going, I don't know, John, I don't feel like going, blah, blah, blah. He goes, come on, come on. So he talked me into it. I didn't know what to expect. And when we got there, Stevie opened up with the first song. I remember the first thing I noticed about Stevie was how small he was. And that all his muscles and everything, all his power was in his forearms and his hands. And I remember he almost looked like Popeye to me. I'll never forget. It was like just a personal thing I caught of him. And then he started playing. And it was clear by the second song to everybody in the room, myself included, that a new musical force had arrived. Mm-hmm. It was clear. I remember he sat down in his chair, lit up a cigarette, and played what would become Riviera Paradise. It still hadn't been recorded or released yet. At this point, when I listen to it now, it's just like, oh my God. And then, what? Ba-na-na-dun-dun-dun. He's playing Voodoo Child? And I remember people behind us, oh, this should be good because no one could touch Hendrix. Stevie Ray Vaughan took it to another level. Mm-hmm. I remember as we left, we were walking around the El Macombo, and the parking lot in the back, there was the white milk truck that they were traveling in. And who do I see? I was with someone, and we were, at the time when I did that, and I was with someone, and it was his rhythm section loading their own gear into the back of a milk truck. So we were looking at him, and Tommy Shannon says, come here. Like, we were like from here to there, right? And it's like, hey, Tom, that was a great show, but you don't know me. We were in there. And I go, you guys got to do your own gear? And he says, yeah, it's the way it is. And as we were driving back, John Long says to me, can you imagine? Stevie just came out of flying in private jets, making a six-figure salary, living in the best hotels, and now he gave it all up to driving a milk truck from town to town. Little did we know what was going to happen to him. What a trip that was, man.
For sure. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
And my final question, you kind of answered it, but tell me about your relationship with your guitar.
Wow. I have 65 guitars in my collection. I've been a collector my whole life. They're pieces of art to me. I love the guitar, I think, because every time I pick it up, something new comes, something new that I never heard before. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle I'll work for the rest of my life to put together, knowing that I never will. I think that's what will keep me waking up every morning. That and, of course, my kids and my family, right? It's everything. It's given me my purpose in life, my way of thinking. Hey, you know what? If it wasn't for guitar, I never would have been a drunk and got sober. I never would have traveled Europe, all through Europe, all through Canada, all through the States. It's because of that piece of wood with 6 strings on it. Did I know at the time that was going to happen? No. It was a passion that kept me going. I love the instrument. I love everything about it. There's a lot of things I hate about the instrument too, because I'm an avid practicer. I'm the guy that there's sometimes I can't get stuff, and I'll bash my head against the wall until I get it. My point is, it's my lifeline. I get up in the morning, I look forward to picking it up to see what new chapter is going to come to me today. Maybe nothing, but I know it's going to come sooner or later. I love the instrument. Owning over 60 should tell a lot too. But again, I want to stress, isn't that overkill? They're pieces of art to me. I mean, hanging on my walls are, private or personal pictures that were taken by Eddie Kramer of Hendrix, and that were gifts to me by, Hendrix's producer, and this, that, and this. But I also have, signed lithographs from Picasso. I love art. Guitar to me is just one of those arts, but it's my most passionate art, right? And if I can say, I just snagged, I've been waiting forever, a lithograph from, I'm blanking here, Andy Warhol signed.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm that kind of guy. I'm a book collector and the whole bit. But guitars they're beautiful. They're art. They're, and sometimes the most beautiful guitar to me is the most beat up one. It's about what it says to me when I pick it up, right? And I'll leave it at this. I've always been a lover of vintage instruments, not because it's cool. It's because a vintage instrument has a story, and it will tell you every time you plug in. I have early 60s guitars, and I'll leave it at this. When you plug one of those guitars in an amp, you are instantly transported back to 1960. That to me is the magic of vintage instruments. I love that.
Frank, thank you very much for doing this.
I love you for inviting me into your home. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.